So I'm trying to turn this cheap £150 Harley Benton into a custom shop killer for £500 all in. And today is going to be the last upgrade that we do to this guitar. Yes, it's almost finished, partly because I've run out of money. I've spent all the £500 now, near enough to the penny. And secondly, because this guitar is now in a really good place. I mean, not right now because we've got one more video to go, but I think it looks great. I think it sounds good and it feels much better than it did as well. The big question is, has it all been worth it? Has it all been worth the £500? Does it now feel like a more expensive guitar than it was? Well, I think we're going to save that to the next video when we've done all the upgrades. Today is going to be all about the electronics. I mentioned in the last video that I think this might be one of, if not the most important upgrade that we do. Personally, for me, the first place I go for any electronics on all my guitars is James' Home of Tone. James is such a legend. He has a great shop here in the UK that stocks basically anything you could want for doing the electronics on your guitar. It also does hardware and things like that. So we've got everything here that we need to redo every component of the guitar. A little message: cheers dude, hope it all goes well. James is such a nice guy. I talk to James quite regularly about little problems I have with guitars, and he's always the nicest guy to talk to. One other thing I did to prep for this episode is I had to drill the holes in the pickguard a little wider. It seems that Far Eastern pots are slightly smaller, so I've just drilled them out to fit the new CTS. And also, I got a manky old piece of wood and drilled sort of a template in. My thinking behind here is that we will just solder everything on here to keep everything in place and also to avoid damaging the pickguard. Now, because James is also an absolute darling, he has also drawn me like a custom wiring diagram, which I'm going to need to use a lot because, as I've mentioned, I've not really got any idea what I'm doing. One thing that James has also done is he's recorded me a little message. I asked him a few questions and we figured, you know, we may as well ask those questions for you guys as well. And he's recorded a little message. Figured it was better coming from the horse's mouth than myself because he knows what he's doing when it comes to this sort of stuff. So let's hear from James. I will get started wiring this as best as I can.
Hey Jackson, James here from Home of Tone. Hope you're doing well. So rather understandably, on these Far Eastern, low budget, etc. type cost guitars, basically these instruments have such a low retail cost, it's really understandable that the manufacturers need to cut corners somewhere. And more often than not, that tends to be pointed at the wiring components. The two main reasons why somebody might consider replacing wiring on these, for me, comes down to two main points. Reliability, so quality of the component, how robust they are. The other reason might well be tonal reasons. And I think that perhaps is where waters get a little bit more murky.
Okay, first kind of couple of joints are done. I've soldered the volume pot to the switch. Well done me. I mean, actually, I'm pretty happy with that.
For me, it all boils down to tolerances. So for potentiometers, for capacitors, they're all produced within a tolerance, manufacturer's tolerance. Lower quality items like what's in that Harley Benton, for example, or other Far Eastern made guitars, they're going to be of lower quality, which normally means a broader tolerance. So something like a 500k pot that's in that, for example, will more than likely be a 20% tolerance, which means you'll have a pot that could read anywhere from 400k to 600k. So for me, that yields unpredictable results. So I think fitting things like CTS 450 series pots, usually between 5 and 10% tolerance. And ultimately, it's about getting the best out of the pickup set. And that can be with the factory pickups in these guitars. You don't necessarily have to change pickups in a guitar to get the best from the guitar. I hope this helps, and I hope this helps you out, Jackson, as to why we chose the parts we chose for your project. Hope it all goes well. Look forward to watching it. I'll be judging your soldering skills. See you, Jackson.
I have to say, James, if you ever need some help, I think I'm the guy. I mean, look at this. This is just, oh my word, this is just the neatest I've ever seen. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but you know what? I'm actually really proud of the work here. So we've got all the ground, the green wires of the ground. Here I've used a little leg from the cap to ground that little bit there. You know, little tricks like that just prove how much of a professional I am. So actually, I'm over the moon with that. I think the next thing is going to be mount this to the pick guard and then get everything else like the pickups wired to the switch and things like that. So that's going to be the next step. Let's take this out of the little template I've made. This has been a godsend. If you're going to do this yourself, get yourself a manky piece of wood. I was stressed about this episode because whenever I've done wiring before, you know, if I've got angry with myself or things haven't gone quite well. I know we haven't tested it yet, but just from a neatness perspective and just how things have gone, I'm really happy. Let's show you. So here we go. Obviously we've got the 2 new pots in, pickups are wired in, the switch, all the ground to the bridge stud there. Yes. Let's put a couple of pickguard screws in. We'll go upstairs and see if it works. I'm feeling good. I'll be pretty bummed out if this isn't working as it should. So let's turn the amp on. Okay, we do have some grounding. So there is some ground noise. I don't know how much of that is going to be just sort of acceptable noise. Does seem like quite a lot. I'm not quite happy with that. Let's just check the other things work. Okay, volume works. Okay, yeah, so something isn't quite right. Right, back to the drawing board. Right, okay, so it is a couple of days later, and I've managed to fix whatever problem we had going on with the electronics here. And I'm almost ashamed to admit that I actually still don't know what the problem was. I tried a few things, I tested out the multimeter on a few joints and make sure everything was working as it should, and on paper there should have been no grounding issues. So I ended up doing all of the ground wires again, and it's much quieter now. It's much better and we're in a much better place with the electronics and how it's sounding in general. I spoke briefly to James about, you know, potentially the issue that I was having, and you know, we didn't really come to much of a conclusion either. He suggested that maybe one of the solder joints had just gone cold or something like that. But really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter now because it's working and this guitar is finished. I'm really, really happy with it. For me, this was, yeah, 500 quid is still a lot of money, but this was a project that I've taken on over the last couple of months. At the weekend, it's been a really good thing to do, and in a way, that is more valuable than having a great guitar to play. Just those hours spent, you know, working on a guitar has been really, really great. Second to all that, I personally think we have a really great guitar now, and we've all managed to keep it within the budget. So let's talk about the budget real quick. So the Harley Benton was £144. The can of nitro paint, Shell Pig paint from Northwest Guitars, was £13.99. The Duesenberg Le Trem was £88. I've been told it's a Les Trem, like a Les Paul, but I'm going to stick with Le Trem. I think it sounds fancier. The Tone Engine nut was £9. The Goto bridge was £27. The Graphtec string trees were £10, and the tuners, the Wilkinson tuners, were £24. Then the pickups, the Mojo pickups, were £125, which I believe left us with £59 and 1 penny for all the electronics. And you're going to say it's fake. You're going to say I faked this, but I spent £59 on the electronics. Total cost of this whole build was £499 and 99 pence. I'm not making this up. I will put a screenshot of my spreadsheet with all the links and stuff of what we spent. £499 and 99 pence. We have 1 penny left. Okay, so now we've talked about the budget and the guitar, I think it's probably time we got some tones. So this is the final product, I guess. Let's start with the neck pickup. so I'm now editing the video. I've managed to sort of get some headphones on and compare the tones from before we did the electronics and now with the finished guitar. And it's interesting, really interesting. What do I think? So before we change the electronics, I do actually feel like the guitar had a slightly higher output. Now, there are a few things to consider here. It's not a super scientific experiment because I am actually running a slightly different pedal board, slightly smaller pedal board, but it does have less buffers on it. So maybe previously the board I was running a few weeks ago had a few more buffers on. Maybe it was driving the signal to be slightly hotter. I will make sure to do a more scientific experiment in the next video. So with the new electronics, I do think we have a little more clarity. The pickups sound a little more open. I think this is going to be an upgrade that really presents itself in the long term, probably. You know, as James said, it's all about those tolerances. It's all about the reliability. I know that I now have the best components that pretty much money can buy in there, especially when it comes to the switch, the pots, and the jack. You know, the chance of failure of those components is much, much less. So this series is nearly finished. We just have one more video to go. All along, while I've been recording this series, I've been saying I've been trying to turn this Harley Benton into a custom shop killer for less than £500. And we're going to kind of put my money where my mouth is in the next episode. While it's not a custom shop guitar, it is still an expensive £2,000 Fender Jazzmaster. We're going to be comparing my £500 Harley Benton to this £2,000 Fender Jazzmaster. And we're going to see what the results are in the next episode. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.